here for the testing. Let's have a look at the starting grid.
It's a grid. Porsche locking out the front row. It's the new car, and Yanni, that will be leading it off. Just behind them, a row belonging to Toyota. The 6 car, quickest, fastest of the pair of them, being handled by Mike Conway. Audi will lock out row 3. I'm happy about that, and there was some curbs to be avoided for them. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then, of course, the Rebellion Racing lockout, the privateer entry. They have row 4.
Right, G-Drive on the front row of P2, together with the backseat DC Racing Alpine, which David Cheng crashed this morning, but it is taking a start. Good job by the team. Cinetec Alpine, Nick Lapierre, Roberto Meri for Manor Motorsport, and there's a big store in itself. GTs led off by Chip Ganassi team as well. Ford having some fun, but it looks like not too much fun when it comes to the rain. In fact, they have been hobbled ever so slightly by performance disadvantage. They've got to carry some more weight in this race. Some other changes as well. Other teams being upped just a little bit. The Ferraris likewise have also had some amendments against them. Aston Martin and Porsche, they've got a little bit of an advantage. What about the AMS? Yeah, the biggest pro field of the year. Here's the AMS, Aston Martin and Ferrari on the front of that grid. We got Ferrari, Porsche, Chevrolet Corvette, that's the factory Labra car, Ferrari, 2 more Porsches, Ferrari, Porsche, Ferrari. Fantastic field we've got. Just in total, 9 LMP1 cars, 23 LMP2s.
And here are those that are hobbled. The 4 car here, amazing to see a P1 car so far back. Why on earth they wouldn't allow them to start at the back of their own class for the 110% rulers is one question. But that was a burnout, of course, for Pierre Caffer and his car very, very early on. In fact, it was in the free practice session, and they've rebuilt the car and they've done a stunning job. 2 crashes this morning in the warm-up as well, Mark, and a remarkable rebuild for Panciatichi's car, the 35 back DC Racing Alpine.
David Cheng had a big accident. He caught some water on the curbs. It was dry this morning, but some overnight rain was inside the curbs. That car caught that at Indianapolis, went heavily sideways into the wall there. The Paul Lupscher car, they crashed in the Porsche curves, and would you believe they hit one part of the Porsche curves that doesn't have the new softer barriers?
It just shows, Jeremy, you ride your luck, and I guess if you're going to get your bad luck out of the way, then why not do it early on and hope that that's the worst of it?
Well, that's very true. Certainly for the Risi Competizione car number 82, the Ferrari 488 GTE, the brand new car for this year, turbocharged Ferraris this year in GTE, and he did the job perfectly. He spun through the Porsche curves on Thursday. Here is our starting command, which we didn't hear, but there was the starting command. So the engine are now fired up, and Giancarlo Fisichella spun through the Porsche curves, and he found the newly extended gravel trap, which saved that team a massive amount of work.
That was Brad Pitt, of course, giving the starting order. He will then be waving the tricolor to start the cars. Now, whether they're going to do that now or they're going to do it when eventually they decide it's safe to call in the safety car, we'll have to find out.
Well, there's not going to be any parade lap here. They are going to start the clock, and we will be rolling behind the safety car. As to how long, anybody's guess. Here's your countdown, however.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The race will start now behind the safety car. The race has started behind the safety car. 84th edition of the 24 Hours of Le Mans starts behind the safety car.
So Brad Pitt then, who was given a ride round circuit by Alex Wurz this morning. I mean, what was the insurance bill for that, I wonder? What's the insurance bill for standing in the middle of this? 60 cars, as we mentioned, 9 LMP1s, 23 P2s, 14 Pros and 13 GTMs, the biggest field ever at Le Mans. And amongst those, Garage 56 entry, we have a quad amputee, Frederic Sasso, making that start, and that is going to be a story in itself. Well, as the race gets underway, Damien Faulkner's just jumped into the chair. You've heard a lot of him this morning, we know, during the warm-up and during the Road to Le Mans race. Damien, you as a driver, what will you be feeling now, knowing that this race is going to start once the track conditions are good enough, safe enough?
Yeah, well, you'll just be itching in the bit to get on. You'll be fully, fully tuned into it. You'll be fully behind your team. Your teammates will be all behind you. This is one big team thing, and I think they're just waiting to get for the green lights. Really, that's the important thing, and that's what they want. Right now, on the yellow flags lap, or this first out lap, They just want that to be over, to be honest. The rain, I don't think they really care about the rain.
You are kidding me. Damien Fogler's giving us one of those knowing looks right now. I think it's fair to say that we've become used to. Here we go then, behind the safety car, and that's no safe place ultimately to be throughout moments such as this. Damien, we've seen the safety car getting itself out of shape while we went to level 4. At the moment, the rain level is between 2 and 3, but if we hit 4, then goodness only knows what the safety car might hit.
Yeah, well, we heard, sorry Mark, we heard the other day from one of the Audi drivers who said that the car was fantastic under the wet and damp conditions. However, when it was a layer, just single layer
That's what the team is working on in the pits. We saw it being wheeled in backwards. The other car that hasn't taken the start is, surprise, surprise, the Bicolis car. We only say we think, it's not confirmed yet, that was the car that dumped its oil on part of the circuit this morning in the warm-up.
And somebody else who had a problem during the warm-up was the number 97 Aston Martin entry. Darren Turner was telling me that they had some gear selection problems on that car this morning. It was the actuator mechanism. They think they've fixed it, but even if they haven't, he's not too concerned. He said when they try to downshift, they might not immediately get the gear they want, but he doesn't expect it to be too much of a problem moving forward in the early stages of the race.
Damien, standing water. We just saw the number 5 Toyota going for a huge puddle. This is good. This is going to be a long time, isn't it?
Okay, team, at the moment, no need to weave. Just keep me updated on this first lap. Let me know what conditions look like and how long you think the safety car may be out for.
Yeah, just listened to some team radio there. And so, I mean, obviously, it won't start if it's too wet. That's the main factor, okay? So when I say they don't care about the rain, you know, a racing driver wants to win. All of these guys, especially at the front in this the LMP1 field, they're all professionals. So they're all, you know, excellent in the wet. They're all excellent in the dry. They just want to get going. And so, you know, it's up to the race director, of course. The safety car drivers out there as well. So they're going to call it as to, you know, when they're going to start this race. If it's too wet, they'll delay it a little bit longer.
Carlton, motor racing is dangerous, but safety has to still be the prime consideration.
Absolutely, and I think ever more so. You're seeing the soft barriers being brought in here, various regulation changes. Of course, as we head down the long straight, of course, you suddenly come across the chicanes, which were one of the first sort of safety features to try and knock out a bit of pace. It seems that year on year, though, the cars get quicker and constantly have to just be reined back in. And as they get more pace about them, of course, the danger levels increase. Safety factors, of course, ever mindful of those. And in fact, rules have been changed for next year. Mark just announced the other day to enhance safety even further.
Yeah, we've got a whole raft of changes coming up. In fact, over the next 2 years, driver survival cells in 2018, as in GT for the LMP1 cars. We've got a 10 megajoule increase in power, up from 8, but we've also got other things like the hybrid components will be isolated from the drivers of the P1 cars. Big changes, but we've got plenty of time to talk about those during the race. Let's get on with what little action we're getting a moment. This is what you're seeing if you are on board the number 68 car.
Well, that was almost my view from the safety car as well, which I was taken out, the pace car, I should say, by the great Tom Christensen, who will be a guest of ours a little bit later on. 9 times a winner here, of course. You saw the Bicolis racing machine actually still in the pits. It's having a timed release. That was a total burnout of the electrical loom, various clips and stays, injectors and the like. They've done a superb job of rebuilding it.
Yeah, Pierre Caffer actually saved that car. He was the one that obviously that was driving it at the time, but jumped out, realized the scale of the problem right away, ran around the car and in through the smoke, couldn't see anything but unclipped the bodywork, ripped it off so that they could extinguish the fire. But for his intervention, it would have been a lot worse.
Well, we're going to be heading to a break.
We've lost the onboard, so I can't see anything at the minute. Can you keep me updated about track conditions, please?
Yeah, lots of water, lots of water. Very poor visibility.
Copy that, understood. Keep weaving. Tyres currently at 32 degrees all around. Try degrees to get some temperature into the front. So we're dropping down to 30 degrees right now.
Amazing. The keep breathing instruction is actually just a calming instruction. Essentially, it's a bit of physio. Just keep yourself calm as you possibly can in conditions which, as you can see, almost require a periscope.
I thought she meant keep breathing as opposed to don't drown. There's so much water. Lena Gade, of course, 3 times Le Mans winner with the number 7 crew. And this is her last Le Mans.
We'll take a break.
Завтра в прямом эфире на Евроспорт 2. Рут дю Сюд. 5-й этап. За неделю до Уимблдона устройтесь поудобнее и наслаждайтесь красивой игрой. С понеделька в прямом эфире на Евроспорт 1 ATP Ноттингем.
Welcome back. Believe it or not, we are actually racing. The 31 car just visiting the pits at the end of that first lap behind the safety car. We're just going to head downstairs and find out what the gearbox issue is for the Ford Chip Ganassi Team 67 car. Here we go.
Well, Harry, we're standing here looking at your car in the garage, the number 67 Ford. That's not where it's supposed to be right now. Can you tell us what's happened?
Yeah, unfortunately, Andy lost gearbox pressure on the reconnaissance lap to the grid. So, yeah, struggling to change gear, stuck in I think 3rd or 4th gear. So, had to bring it in the box, and we're just trying to diagnose the problem now. I mean, only saving grace at the moment is the safety car, so it's not like we're losing too many laps. But yeah, we're going to need to get out in the next 5 or 6 minutes if we're going to have any chance of pouring it back.
Is this something that's been a problem before at all, or is this a completely new issue with these cars?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we've been very reliable in testing, but I think we're getting ready to go, so we'll see what happens. But I know they had an issue like this in Daytona, but I think it's all fixed. So yeah, we're not 100% sure. I'm certainly not from the WEC team anyway.
Okay, well, lots of luck. We hope you get out there.
So thank you, Liz. Liz Halliday, of course, our indefatigable pit lady. She's a Le Mans racer herself. She won Sebring. She knows how it works, just like Damien Faulkner does. We had news up from the pits. The ESM car, the 51 Mitchell car that's running this weekend, called...
Okay, copy that. Your comments are making it straight back.
So, yeah, going back to the ESM car, it's the car that won at Daytona and Sebring this year. They started it with Pipo Derani. The team took the decision to bring the car in, change the driver. They said there's no point having Pipo going around in these conditions. We'll save him for when we really need him, when it's hard and wet. And, of course, it's strategy that won them both Daytona and Sebring. And I'm sure Jeremy Shaw might be able to fill in on that.
Yeah, Ed Brown, of course, has a lot less experience than the other guys in the car, so he's got to complete a minimum of 6 hours driving in this race. So, smart decision there to put the silver driver Ed Brown in that car during while the cars are running at much reduced pace, Mark. So, yeah, good strategy call by Extreme Speed Motorsports.
The rain is abating. We're back down to level 2, which is good news because we were going from 2 to 3, and if we'd hit 4, possibility of a red flag being thrown for the first time here at Le Mans. We are racing, would you believe, albeit behind the safety car. If you're only just joining us, you haven't missed a whole lot, apart from a whole lot of spray which is being kicked up. Now, the drivers are being requested, or any of their comments, incidentally, on open radio are actually being relayed back to race control. I'm sure they're across absolutely everything, and that's the way it should be, Mark, because if anyone's going to be worried about the conditions, you want it first-hand, and first-hand means the drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you'd like stuff first-hand as well, we're all on Twitter this year, so just keep those messages coming in. Mine is at Mark Cole Comms. One S in comms.
It's amazing, actually, that you're on Twitter at all. What have you done with the carrier pigeons?
Well, we shot it.
All of them?
Ate it last night.
Well, there we are. Mark is open for business. So, indeed, is Damien Faulkner.
At Damien Faulkner. Damien with an E.
And with a K in the middle of Faulkner.
It is, yeah. Or at the end.
And it's at Carlton Kirby, pure and simple, CARLTONKIRBY, no dots, dashes, capitals, anything like that.
And at Jeremy Shaw, racer.
Good. Now keep them coming in. Let's tell you, Audi Sport is very concerned that temperature on the track has dropped from 28 degrees to 18 degrees. When that rain arrived, the air temperature is only 15 degrees, and this is going to cause all sorts of problems. Damien, brakes particularly, as well as tyres.
Well, yeah, but if we just come back to that onboard footage there with the Audi, I think it was Andrea Lauder on to his engineer, and he was complaining about visibility. But you see actually on the screen where there was condensation coming up, and I'm thinking it might have been on the inside, but it might have been between the layers of plastic, the tear-offs on the windscreen. And if it is, that's not good. They're in trouble. We just got an onboard shot of the Toyota. They have no such issues.
There we are. You know, when you hear more and more about Toyota and their coping strategies for various incidents, the more impressed you get. They've actually got an air conditioning unit on their battery. There you go. Just to get an optimum temperature. I think everyone else is using venting, but they've actually got an aircon unit dedicated to that. Here's your 67 car. Yeah. Gearbox pressure issues apparently resolved.
Andy Prio then waiting to go out. He'll go down 2 laps. So this has really been a godsend. If they're going to have that trouble, have it before the actual full speed racing starts. Might have gone 2 laps down, but they could pull that back over the next 24 hours. Maybe.
A lot of water being dissipated by the vehicles themselves. I'm actually looking out on some mirror flat puddles at the moment. It looks like the rain has in fact stopped, which is good news. So I'm not quite sure how long it's going to take us to get back to a racing position right now. But the kick up from the vehicles here will dissipate a lot of it. There's also an inherent amount of temperature still within the track, and that's going to help some of the evaporation. Now, the big worry is that water does collect, particularly in some of the pans, can we call them that? Where you have these, what they call baguettes here, basically the rumbles on each of the corners. They can hold water, and that's what David Chang found this morning in the warm-up in 35 car.
Yeah, that was down at Indianapolis, and interestingly, before that happened, the race director had warned everyone there is water in those rumble strips.
That's right. That was after the oil warning.
Oh, yeah.
Oil as well, and it wasn't coming up through the ground.
If you're just joining us, we're now 15 minutes into the 84th edition of Le Mans 24 Hours, and the cars are only just completing their second lap behind the safety car. and it's continuing.
Well, the breeze is blowing up, and that usually on stormy days announces yet more inclement weather. It's going to be a question of coping with it. Coping strategies to the fore. A lot of teams didn't cope terribly well in qualifying. It almost seemed unfair that so many of the major cars, particularly LMP2s, have been hobbled by 110% rule. The 27 S&P racing car is one of those. The 30 machine, the Extreme Speed Motorsports, also towards the back. Krone Racing plumb at the back, incidentally, from the P2 cars. The SO 24 by Lombard Racing, the 22 machine, Capio is way at the back as well. So is Pegasus Racing after a spin early on. And honestly, it's a big question for me is how on earth were they so cruel to these guys when we only had just a handful of minutes, relatively speaking, of full dry qualifying, and then the rain came and went and came and went, and the initial times that we set in the first session of qualifying stuck, and it was impossible to get within 110, no matter how 110% of those times, class by class. And it seems very, very strict, Mark, interpretation of the rules, not to give them just a class relegation, but an entire field relegation.
I agree. Normally that's what would happen. I think this is Le Mans there. The ACO had their own rules. Now we've got a tweet coming in from Paul Dunn saying, I thought there were 3 safety cars at Le Mans. Yes, you're absolutely right, Paul, there are, but for the start, because the field was already bunched up together, just 1 safety car, and it's in the hands of a very capable driver, Yannick Dalmas, 4 times Le Mans winner, and he...
Okay, copy that. Keep giving me the information. We get it back to the race director, okay? Thanks.
So the safety car driven by Yannick Dalmas, 4 times a Le Mans winner, and all those wins in different makes of car. Maybe he's going to win it for Audi this weekend.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely drive in here next year, won't he? After that lovely control slide the other night.
Well, we're going to be talking to Mark Webber fairly shortly. Expect some the sort of laconic response that you usually get at Mark Webber. Used to have a pub actually, not that far from Silverstone, or indeed your hacking ground, Mark. And occasionally he would pull a pint there and kind of fill you in as to his thoughts. So I'm going to imagine that. So imagine him pulling a long brown one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a Stag at Mentmore. There we are. So safety car then.
I remember when I spoke to you last year after this race, you said it was one of the hardest races that you've ever fought. What are you expecting from this year's battle?
Yeah, well, we know they don't hand the victories out around here, so we've got to work very hard. So it's going to be really, really tough on the machinery, on the material. I got a big 24 hours ahead of us, and you know, Timo, Brent, and myself, we're all absolutely ready to go. The car's been immaculately prepared. Last 6 months been focused for this moment. So everything is gorgeous under the bonnet, and we just cross our fingers now that Le Mans will give us also a little bit of luck.
Well, you are the current world champions in this car. You've had an incredibly successful time. Does that give you a little bit more confidence coming into this race off the back of so many great results?
I think that for sure as a group we're very happy and confident from our work in the past, but Le Mans is a different beast altogether. So we've got our eyes open. You know, we respect the competition, we respect the race. You know, I keep saying it's almost you have to beat the race actually. Beating everyone else is fine, but if you have fuel and tyres, no garage time, then for sure you're on the podium and probably the middle step.
Okay, best of luck. Thank you.
So that was Liz catching Mark Webber late of the Stag at Mentmore before it started raining, of course. And look at this, you know, it's bad enough inside car, but look what it's looking like for our cameras as they come over Mulsanne hump, then down into that kink into the fearsome Mulsanne corner with so much sand sitting on the outside to catch anyone. Then Damien, that blast down to Indianapolis, which is frightening even in the dry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's caught some people out here this weekend already with the changing conditions, and not least one of the LMP2s this morning in the warm-up in the dry, but crucially it had a wet apex. He caught that, tried to correct it, overacted it, pendulumed around the other way and hit the barrier. So, yeah, I mean, this is challenging. It's really challenging. There's so many variables, so many things that can go wrong. I think Mark Webber had a fantastic quote the other day. He said, I'm not... I forget the quote now, but basically, I'm not trying to beat my rivals. I'm trying to beat the race.
Right.
Yeah, very good point. There's a lot of things to beat here, certainly. So looking at GTLM now, yeah, the race hasn't yet got properly underway, but it is cool to see a Ford GT leading at Le Mans. I'm not sure whether this is the first time a Ford has actually led at Le Mans since it won quite 50 years ago, because it won those 4 years in a row. But it's been an awful long time since the Ford has been out in front. It matters not now, of course. What matters is about 23 hours and 40 minutes from now. That's when they hope to be out in front in GTE Pro.
Yeah, there was a period, of course, between the GT racing when they had the Ford C100s here.
I don't think that ever led here, did it?
Never led. No, I'm going to say that it hasn't all been GT. They did have those Group C prototypes, which were not successful, sadly, but great-looking cars.
Now, have we talked about the balance of performance changes that were made in GTE?
Waiting for when you came on.
Yeah, GTE since
and here you are.
Since the qualifying sessions, there's been some changes there, because from the test day to qualifying on Wednesday and Thursday, the Fords and the Ferraris suddenly found 4 seconds in lap time. Nobody else did, but those two manufacturers did. And since then, the ACO has gone through all the data on the cars. They made various changes to the specifications on those cars. The Fords and the Ferraris carrying a little bit more weight than they were before. Also, the Ford has had to reduce the turbo boost on their engines a little bit, and also a few slight adjustments to the fuel tank capacities on various cars in GTE. The thinking there is to try to make sure that each of the GTE Pro cars
too early.
And that radio there was Anthony Davidson calling into the Tour de Gazoo Racing, saying that in his opinion, it's still too wet to go racing. But as I said, the first changes to the balance performance, and we don't really know, because the cars did hardly any running this morning in the warm-up to know what changes they were made. Also, for the Corvettes and the Aston Martins, they'd allowed a slightly larger air restrictor, get a little more air into the car, a little more horsepower. So changes there, and we're going for a quick commercial break.
Завтра в прямом эфире Евроспорт 2. Route du Sud. 5-й этап.
Angle Tires.
This is Man. What you can see of it at the moment, mixed calls out on the track. Toyota being told by their drivers it's too wet to start. Patrick Pilet, who's in a GT Porsche, said it's almost dry. Why are we starting the race?
There you are. It also depends on when those messages were sent, because there are certain parts of this track which are extremely dry, and others which, quite frankly, are still downright dangerous. I guess, Jeremy, what they don't want is to release them and then have to change their mind.
Yes, very, very true. They want to make sure that they are. Everybody's in agreement. Of course, the guys that particularly like driving in the rain, there's a lot of drivers that do particularly like driving in the rain. I certainly did, not to this level, admittedly, but I certainly like driving in the rain. But there's a lot of drivers that don't. And so people like Patrick Pilet, who really do enjoy it, they want the race to get underway. Those are not quite so happy, they don't. And a quick note here, my thanks to Graham Leslie. Graham, thanks so much for sending in a tweet to say that it would be Chris Cumming getting in the 31 car, as Ed Bound is in the 60 ESM car number 30. So very good point, Graham. Thank you for paying attention. That was my error, and yet another error from me, I think. But hopefully, it probably won't be the last, but hopefully it will be. And of course, thank you, Graham Leslie.
Of course, Graham, son of David, one of our much missed co-commentators here at Le Mans. And anyway, Audi again on the radio saying visibility is too poor. We are not going to accept the car should be released yet, and Toyota also saying no, conditions aren't right. We're just seeing some blue sky from the commentary box looking west. There are patches up there, Carlton.
It looked like an eye in the sky, did it not? We're just heading downstairs. I believe we've got with Simon is Mark Lieb from the number 2 Porsche. In fact, here he comes. We'll be dropping in with plenty of these interviews throughout, by the way, so do enjoy. Great team.
Okay, sorry, we had some problems with Mike. Sorry about that. So once again, yeah, Mark Lieb. Okay, now we're on Mark. Nochmal die Frage. Bildschirm gesehen, die Konditionen draußen gesehen, bisschen Funk auch schon gehört. Wie ist momentan?
Ja, momentan geht's, glaube ich, ganz gut. Ich denke mal, dass
so the conditions are. Would you like to describe them for us and your fears?
Well,
the first cars, there have been cars already coming in. As far as tyre choice is concerned, we're still on full wets. And obviously going to have to stay at least a couple of laps on those tyres in these conditions. Interesting, Mark. Full wets are...
The heavy load, like a small vibration, not huge, just the vibration. Mate, when the safety car is going to be pulled in? Not yet. No, Eduardo is fairly quiet. What is the situation? Is there much falling rain on that lap? No, there's not rain, but it's just heavy wet at the moment. Copy.
Let's just ride with that. Andy Priaulx complaining that still some issues, Mark. Still some issues. They came in with gearbox pressure problems, and it seems potentially not resolved. Jeremy?
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you were putting your hand up because you wanted to answer it.
was that Andy Priaulx? Was that Mike Conway on that radio?
There's Andy Priaulx from the Ford, yeah. And I mean, they've got 4 cars here, Ford, and if one car's going to have bad luck, it's always going to be the same car, isn't it? This is what happens throughout.
Well, they're certainly hoping only one car has a problem. But the good news is, of course, they do have 4 cars here in the race.
Overkill, one might say, but that celebrates 66, 67, 68 and 69, the years in which they won, and that's reflected in the car numbers. And as we discussed the other night, the first year they won was with a Mark II, the second year they won was a Mark IV, and the last 2 years was with the Mark I again. So
yeah, well, they kept changing the rules around about that, didn't they? And the 7-litre car was outlawed, isn't that correct, for the last couple of years?
That's right. It went from 7 litres down to 4.7, and John Wire, of course, ran those last 2 years as the Gulf cars.
Scott Dixon and Ryan Briscoe there in the pits. Thumbs up from Dixie. I'm sure he always likes driving in the rain. He's had a fair bit of experience that in the very early stages of his career in New Zealand. And we're certainly getting a lot brighter here now, and I would anticipate a restart fairly soon. Yeah, heard that from the note on our scoring screen to say the rain level of intensity has dropped to what they describe as a level 1, and I would say it's less than that around most of this 8.5-mile racetrack.
Yeah, the Manor guys all sitting there in their garage. I bet they're glad they're here and not in Baku. They used to be in Formula 1. John Booth and Graham Loudon, of course, running at team. We're waiting to hear from Edouard Freitas. He's been very, very quiet, having been talked to death over the last 3 or 4 days, hasn't he?
Yeah, good point there, Mark Cole. He's quiet to us, but I'm sure he's not very quiet when talking to the various teams and drivers on the radio. His communications with everybody here. I'm sure he's getting an awful lot of input right now as to whether this race is, or the race track is in good enough condition to start this race properly.
Talking about weather and Baku, I understand that, I'm not wishing, no Schadenfreude intended, but apparently the drain cover issues there, also presumably with bad weather. Well, I'm assuming that's what the issue is.
Well, I think Jean Todt, who's here at the moment, better jump on a plane and get over there and sort it out. Carlton safety car has been requested by race director to pick up speed, so that means that conditions are obviously good enough that the safety car's not going to fall off the track.
This glorious silver Ferrari that we've all been enjoying so much of, if you've got your compact and you want to get a look at just how your hair is, then just stand next to this. It's quite absolutely remarkable. They've got an amazing driver lineup as well, with Rob Bell, Keita Sawa and Ma Weng-sung. It's going to be a challenger. They won the Asian Le Mans Series, which is why they got the right to race here, Mark.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. And Rob Bell brought in at quite late notice to help out with that effort. He's got Mox Weng and Keita Sawa with him, and they're looking to do something good. And of course, Robert Bell is quick enough to put that car on pole position.
Indeed, so that's the point. They've started on the pole position, and they made that stop early in this race to get the lesser experienced driver in. Again, good strategy there.
Well, here we are then, Porsche. No, we're just waiting to hear from the number 2 car of Neil Carney there. It hasn't happened. Just some nice close-ups then of...
How are the track conditions now? How are the track conditions now? First corner, onward, until exit Terre Rouge, they're quite good. There is after that now. The sun is slowly coming out. The track should hopefully dry quickly, and we'll see how long we can go with these tires and try to go to the slip.
That was the most laid-back series of instructions I've ever heard. It was almost like this race was 20 hours old.
Yeah, and I would suggest that since the race director Eduardo Freitas has asked the safety car to pick up the speed, I would anticipate perhaps even going green at the end of this lap. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, quite possibly. Watch that safe car and watch the lights. When those lights go off, if they go off as it's coming through Porsche curves, we will know that we are going to go green for the first time in what is now 34 minutes since the official start.
There we are, 20 minutes and 25 remaining. 23 hours and 25. My goodness, yeah, it's almost difficult to forget what's involved with this amazing race in its 84th incarnation. You've got to have a lot going for you. Ford certainly have got that, along with goodwill from the other teams that had to allow them to come here to contest the GT class, because this car you can't buy and drive upon the road. All the others within the class you can do. So very much a kind of a prototype within the GT class, but everyone's so pleased to have them here. It's brought a lot of attention, Mark, to that particular class, and they'd rather obviously have them here, the opponents that is, than not, despite the fact that at the moment they seem to be head and shoulders above everyone, at least on pace. Will they last?
Yeah, but as we've heard, there's been a lot of changes in balance of performance, and Ford have actually hit back this morning. Raj Nair, who's the head of the Ford program, says the FIA knows that we ran flat out at the test and in qualifying. We feel good about how we performed. The test days are test days. We ran as we ran here, and that's what we do.
That is a
was an
response
interesting
to
quote,
accusations of sandbagging, Jeremy.
Yeah, and yes, they were running pretty quickly, but they weren't running on fresh tyres. They weren't running on low tanks of fuel, and I'm surprised that the data that was taken on board by the ACO technicians weren't able to ascertain that and will check that. So, the fact they went 4 seconds quicker between the test day and here, you can say all sorts of things, but if you're going to tell me they didn't do any simulation of running fresh tyres and or on low tank of fuel, I'd be surprised, because you need to know how the car handles, particularly on a low tank of fuel. So I think they just didn't show their full hand in terms of the sector completing a full lap here, but certainly they were running hard, but not completing a full lap at full speed, I would suggest. But that's the way it is, and the changes have been made, and the Ford guys, they're jumping up and down a bit, but not that much, frankly. I think they've got a good bit in hand on those cars. This is their focus. The cars are trimmed out. They're ready to run for Le Mans 24 Hours, which is a very different racetrack to anywhere else. They are properly prepared, and I'm sure they wouldn't have shown that being in qualifying if they didn't mean it.
We understand that Liz Halliday is going to be with us with Patrick Dempsey in just a few. Sorry, Dempsey. He'll be with us in just a few moments' time. Of course, funneling one of his vehicles here, and here he is.
Well, Patrick, it's great to see you back at Le Mans, but why aren't you driving?
Well, in this weather, very happy to be in here and in the drive. But yeah, it's tough not driving this year. But we had a great year last year and a great run here, and it was nice to step back, spend some time working on my other career and my family. So every now and then you sort of get you want to be out in the car and run around, as you know.
No, absolutely. I know how you're feeling now, but there's been a lot of other celebrities here this week, really different to usual that we see at Le Mans. We saw Brad Pitt was here. Do you think he might want to try his hand at racing at Le Mans too?
I think he had a good ride in the prototype. I think he was really surprised by the pace and also just how long this track is. Until you're out there, you don't really quite understand it. So it was good for him to have that perspective. Good to see everybody here supporting the race, and hopefully brings more attention to the sport and to the series.
Well, I know you love your racing. Have you got any other great racing plans this year, or are you just too busy at the moment?
Not at this point. Every now and then get out and test a little bit. So we'll continue to do that and some karting. So we'll see. Next year we're talking about some things. We'll see what happens.
Great. Well, it's great to have you back here. Thank you.
Great to be back. Thank you.
Now, keep an eye on the top of the safety car. Have those lights gone off yet? Nope.
No, in fact, coming by our commentary position right now, so the sideways view at this point is exactly what we get. Let's just go back to the hobbling, or indeed the advantage that have been handed out to the various GT teams to try and level the playing field, Mark.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So, I don't know I can't quite remember how much Jeremy had completed on what he's saying, but one of the main things is that the fuel increase has been given to Ferrari and Chevrolet because they want everyone to run 14 laps if possible in normal dry running racing conditions.
Yeah, that doesn't really affect the performance of the cars, of course. What does affect the performance is the weight. There was 15 kilograms added to the Ferraris since the test day, 10 kilograms added to the Fords since the test day, plus those restrictor changes, a little bit less on the Aston and Corvette.
Ноттингем, Англия. За неделю до Уимблдона устройтесь поудобнее и наслаждайтесь красивой игрой. С понедельника в прямом эфире на Евроспорт 1 ATP Ноттингем.
Welcome back. We've had cars just coming in to make changes. Intermediates are being put on some vehicles, and this is the reason why we still have a safety car at the moment. There's a perfect example of the pans or bowls, if you like, that hold the water with the curves. Caused incidents today. In fact, we had a crash in the warm mark specifically because of the water here. And here are the blowers that they're trying to make it safe.
As well. David Cheng went off in those very, very puddles at Indianapolis that they're now sweeping out now. So well spotted, Carlton. We have been told that the caution is continuing for another perhaps 1.5 laps to give the marshal a chance to get rid of this water. The rain has stopped. The sun is starting to break through. It's been a very bizarre week here in Le Mans. You know, we're in West France. You do get all the weather from the Atlantic, but it has never been so cold as people who live in Le Mans can recall. We've been 15, 14 degrees every day maximum, and this rain comes and goes in great waves. It's never been persistent, has it? But when it does come, my goodness, it's heavy.
I think that's the problem, Jeremy. It's very difficult for them to make judgments about tyres, etc. The team's stopping for intermediates at the moment. You know, it's a difficult call.
It is a difficult call. This track does dry out fairly quickly, and now if we look out to our west here, southwest, we can see the sun is actually poking through, so that is going to dry. It tends to dry fairly quickly in any case. Once the sun comes out, it'll dry even more quickly, and there's a bit of a breeze as well out there, so that all helps with the drying of the track. And I'm not surprised. I'm a little bit surprised to see the marshals out there blowing bits, blowing the water out of the curbs there. I mean, I think
could be a permanent occupation.
I think it's time to get going, but there was somebody asked us on Twitter, when the decision, Josh Pickett asked, how will the officials decide when to go racing? The drivers and teams will be biased, surely. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there, Joss. And it's purely down to the race director and when he feels it's safe enough. And while he will listen to all of the teams and the drivers, he will get I think his final decision will be made upon the judgment of Yannick Dalmas at the wheel of that safety car there at the front of the field. He was sent out on, was it Thursday night, wasn't it, last night, during the practice when we had that heavy deluge, and he was out there drifting the car around, and he was really quite surprised how wet it was, because he got the car really sideways at one point, and he stayed out there through that whole time, and when he decided the track was good enough to go back to conditions, that's when they restarted the session.
Right, now do you notice that, guys? Just saw a second safety car joining in the game now. That's picking up some of the back markers who have obviously stopped in the pits, and that is 2 of 3 safety cars that we know of on track at the moment.
Indeed, and the reason for that is when cars are not allowed to rejoin from the pit lane until the safety car comes around. So as we saw at the beginning...
Negative, no warning expected. That's what I'm saying in the comment this time. So you can think already about for the next tire choice. I'm not sure, there's not a lot of water left for this front wind, although we can say with these wet tires.
No more rain.
Understood. We'll be looking at a jump to a different compound, obviously, for a different tire choice. Just keep me updated how the tires are doing, keep me updated on movement. Try and keep looking for water, to try and keep it cool for the restart, and try to go after as best you can in high-speed sections. It's trying quite quickly now the sun is down. The chicane is not going to steady one anymore on the line. Yeah, copy that.
So great information there. That was Timo Bernhard on the phone there on the radio with his team updating the track situation. And forget where I was with what I was talking about, but where was I? Do you remember?
Not quite sure, but the thing I was worried about was when we got inside there. It was the mist, the steam steaming up inside, affecting visibility. Not necessarily spray, certainly not the rain. Just one point though to dwell on: if they're going to start complaining about the water that's collected in these pans, first shower they're going to fill up again. Yeah. It can only be clean for the start, surely.
I agree. I don't agree. I don't agree with you, and I don't agree with the officials on that one. I think let's get this race underway. The track is a lot drier than it was, and I think it's good to go. What I was talking about, the additional safety cars, because they do not allow the cars to rejoin from the pit lane until a safety car comes past. Then, as we saw at the beginning, you'd lose a complete lap. Now you only lose a third of a lap. We will be right back.
Yeah, actually, Unitil gave you a debut in a race car last year, but Le Mans is very special to you as well, right?
Yeah, this is history, and for the machines even. One thing is the racers, that's impressive, but 24 hours for the cars to last that long at max performance, that's impressive.
Any chance that we see you racing in Le Mans at any time?
I don't think so. I mean, it would be definitely a cool thing to do, obviously as an amateur way in the back, but no, I don't think so. It takes a lot of practice, and I'm not sure I have that kind of time right now, but maybe in the very distant future.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it certainly looks like the cars are testing their own pace, as you can see, just dropping back a little bit and then just trying to, well, gauge conditions, I think it's fair to say, Mark. They're reporting back all, and it's various stories we're having, but surely we must be underway fairly soon.
Yeah, just waiting then, as we say, to get the word from Eduardo Freitas, our race director, and as Jeremy said, quite pointedly, the buck stops with him, and he's the one who's got to take final decision. The safety of everyone depends on his final word. So we've just confirmed that there are 3 safety cars going around. Jeremy and I picked up on that. You've got safety car A, which is leading the bunch here. You've got safety car C, which is ahead of middleway, and then safety car B, and they're picking up the cars which are now more straggled round the circuit, and that's what will happen during the course of the race. So
now, when you make a pit stop, you don't lose a complete lap, you just lose a third of a lap.
Yeah, and of course the cars are now circulating faster behind the safety car, so they're also, you're not going to wait quite so long. But as Jeremy says, good move. Here's the infamous Mulsanne hump. This has been planed off over the years. John Nielsen famously backflipping the Silk-Cut Jaguar into the trees there, and then later in the years, both Mark Webber and Peter Dumbrick, Carlton.
Peter's flip, quite remarkable. I actually just said to him once, without telling him what I was going to ask him, I just said, how many? And he said, 5.5. How many times he went over, flipping backwards. I was extraordinarily lucky to land in an area that had just been cleared of poplar trees, which are the harvested trees for wood, for burning wood. There's another story about our abode. That's what I was going to mention, actually. The temperatures have been so bad. We lit a fire the other night. Unfortunately, in our rented cottage, we didn't know that there was an anti-bird flap halfway up, so we smoked the place, and poor Jeremy is still coughing at night. Windows are open. Yeah, so we smoke like kippers.
There's the Dunlop guys. Let's just give you some facts and figures about tyres. They're in the news at the moment because drivers are on the cusp of deciding, do we go to intermediates, wets? Michelin, 6,000 tyres here, supplying 33 cars with 100 technicians. Dunlop, who for the first time are in P1, they've got 6,000 tyres as well, 27 cars and 80 engineers. So that's the facts and figures for rubber.
People are whistling the safety car at the moment, and I believe, at least my last look of it, that the safety car lights appear to be out, so presumably they'll stop the whistling, but the crowd are saying get on with it, and they're being led by cheerleader Jeremy Shaw here as well, and myself, because we all agree. That looked very much like an old gold leaf racing colour on the 33. They're absolutely gorgeous. Lights are out on the safety car, fellas.
They are, and this is it, because we don't get paid until they start racing. You do realise that, don't you?
It's nearly an hour gone already.
Yeah, that's right.
Safety car in this lap at last, guys. Well spotted, Carlton. The lights are off on that Audi, and the same will be happening on the other 2 safety cars.
So the crowd will be delighted, Jeremy, and I'm sure you will be too.
Indeed so, and Wolfgang Ulrich doesn't look terribly delighted, but I'm sure he will be once the race gets going. He's back in the 5th and 6th place with the 2 Audis. It will be the 2 Porsches that lead, followed by the 2 Toyotas, and then the pair of Audis as we come now through the Porsche curves, less than half a mile from a start. Finally, a proper start, let's say, of 84th Grand Prix d'Honduras.
52 minutes after Brad Pitt waved the tricolour at these cars to start. We're finally going. There's your colour codes. Just to remind you, red for LMP1 on the side, blue for P2, green for Pro GT, and orange for AM GT. Sun is out. Le Mans 24 hours. It's about to start as the Le Mans 23 hours.
With that view, you'd think that there was no moisture out there. There's still a bit being kicked up as soon as they find a puddle, and they're looking for it, don't forget, just to cool things down. Right now, the safety car is about to pull in. In fact, it has gone. So, next time by, we will be racing here, and we are delighted to tell you that. The 84th running of the great race about to get underway. Safety car's gone, and it's the Porsches that will pick this up to begin.
Yeah, and of course you can see they're not even side by side, of course, because the race has already started. So it's just like a restart after a safety car period, if you like. So that's all good news for the guys at the front.
Damien, cold wet tyres, cold brakes.
Yeah, they're just trying to get as much temperature into their brakes as they can, into their tyres as they can. They've got to be very careful in these first few laps.
Over Dunlop for the first time. The rise and fall in proper racing conditions. So you can see damp all over the place here. The old rooster tail being kicked up. The cars having to be snatched at as well. It's Porsche, of course, leading out 1 and 2. Toyota closest at hand, but Audi also very much engaged here. Lots of questions to be asked, and over 23 hours to find the answers, Jeremy.
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't have the headset on because Damien had it. But yeah, finally we're on the way here. So this is, and we saw one of the top cars in LMP2 came onto pit lane as the green flag came out to make his stop. I would presume, Mark Cole, to go on to intermediate tyres.
Yeah, and everyone else, of course, will be watching to see how good that is. What we're going to watch, so Audi's already coming its way past Toyota, Andre Lotterer, and Duval past Sebastian Buemi. Push that Toyota that was in 4th place down to 6th, but it's still Porsche. Toyota, Mike Conway fighting off Andre Lotterer as they come down into the Forza chicane, the first of the 2 chicanes on that long Mulsanne straight, the Ligne droite de la Honnelière.
And just look at the pickup as well. There's so much water being kicked up here. The defined racing line, and if you come around your teammate, make sure you keep it nice and clean. And there will be a lot of racing and bragging rights within the team. We're on board with both Fords here, and this is the position.
It is a poor position here, and there's been a lot of shuffling going on already at the head of the field in GT. Perhaps it's now Stuart Muller still leading the way. He's actually got past one of the LMP2 cars as well. James Collado, Richard Westbrook and Olivier Pla in that number 66 is under intense pressure, if not being passed by Sam Bird in number 71 Ferrari.
2 cars still out there. It's Neil Yarni in his hands right now. Bernard is Porsche 1 and 2. Conway is on board the Toyota with Lotterer and Duval. Buemi in 6th place at the moment. Best of the Rebellions is the 13 car. Unlucky for some, but they've been riding absolutely beautifully here. Many saying that they could indeed get themselves a podium. In the speed traps, they are amongst the quickest. Here we go then, Mark.
Yeah, but look at this.
Retrievals are squealing here.
Yeah, to Mike Conway, who is the raciest of all at the moment. He's pushing Timo Bernhardt so hard. He's had to look to the left, to look to the right, just backed off as they go through Arnage Corner. You can't race through here. You just have to drive through there like you're in a car. Now, that Toyota in 3rd place. He's going to get hooked up right underneath that number 1 car.
Well, let's see if he manages it. The Audis, by the way, the P1 Audis have certain parts of this track that they need to avoid, most notably some of the humps in the latter curves.
Yeah, it's really treacherous out there right now. Really easy to make a mistake. Let's not forget, this is long. We've got long straightaways we're going to go to during the World Endurance Championship season, and there's lots of the straight as well. So the cars are running much less down than they would do on most tracks. They don't have nearly as much grip through the corners as they would usually have, and that just makes it extra difficult when the rain comes down.
So this is Fords then. It's Muller ahead of Shinji Nakano's Oreca now, but behind him has got the Fords of Westbrook and Pla. They're having a racing time as well. They're coming over then to complete the first racing lap at Le Mans as the clock gets to 3:56. 8 laps completed, 1 racing.
Lotterer paced of them all with a 3:51.60 fastest lap so far, and you can see he is all over the back of Bernard at the moment. The Toyota slotted in here. It's the Toyota of Conway, but Lotterer got by, and they've changed again, swapping positions on the start-finish straight.
That's 3 times in that lap that has changed. Lotterer is on a huge charge in that number 7 car. Lotterer, of course, 3 times winner. Lena Gabe, their race engineer, her last ever Le Mans 24 hours before she's moved across in-house to Bentley to look after customer racing.
Well, never discount Audi, no matter what their problems. They've said no curves. They must not take the heaviest of the curves here because of a connector issue. It's part of the drivetrain retrieval system, and they can shear the connecting gear. if they get airborne, essentially the wheels spin up and it causes a technical issue. So they may well be going quieter, you might say, but it's very, very loud performance at the moment. And check this out, Toyota trapped on the inside of this curve.
Yeah, takes it back from Lotterer. Lovely move there.
Beautiful.
Racing in the early stages here. Neil Jani's got a little bit of a little bit of a lead there, but second, third, fourth, and fifth absolutely tied together. Very circumspect start though from Sebastian Buemi, falling back a little in the sixth place. So having said that, he's just got purple the first sector. Fastest of all. Then this is just a second lap of racing. We've got 8 laps completed in the race, but this is just our second lap under green flag conditions. You can see there how dry this track is becoming and how quickly this track is becoming dry, because there's a dry weather line through there, and it'll be these teams. The tires are incredibly durable these days, even the wet weather tires, and I wonder whether they might even think about going directly from the full wet weather tire to the slicks, because I don't think the track is going to dry so quickly. You come in and put on the intermediates, and then they're going to be done in a lap or two. Then you're going to make another pit stop for slicks, and they won't want to do that. They want to make a minimum number of pit stops as they possibly can.
Mark, some of the offline running, you saw the Dempsey Porsche coming through, doing a great move there, taking a spot. Some of the offline running is the search for water with those wet tyres.
That's a very good point. Yeah, on the straight section, certainly, just to keep them cool. They overheat very, very quickly otherwise. But we've got a problem. Bernhardt's dropped back third. Where did that happen?
Must have happened in the...
Conway's jumped up into second, split the Porsches a moment ago.
Yeah, he was on that second sector, somewhere around that.
Wow.
But look at these Porsches here in GTE Pro. They were outclassed apparently in the qualifying session, but boy, not now, because they're flying through the field up into, are they second and third now, or third and fourth?
But Jeremy, in the wet running, it's all about traction.
Absolutely.
The Porsches have an engine sitting over those back wheels.
Absolutely, and that's what's great about this this category is it's horses for courses and or different conditions. So wonderful to see those Porsches right there in contention. As you suggest, then when the track is fully dry, we would expect the balance of power, not performance, to shift back in favour of the Fords and Ferraris. And of course, the Astons and the Corvettes, they're running a little bit bigger engine restrictor in the race, a little bit more straight line speed.
Fantastic battle here between Sam Byrne and Richard Westbrook. This is for position 6 within the GT Pro class. Super work and a great battle raging up.
They take the lead. Toyota leads Le Mans. Wow, where did that come from?
Amazing.
Fourth to first in one lap.
Well, they've got the range as well, apparently, comfortably within 14. And look at how twitchy the Audis are as they come out of the last curve.
Wow, that was something, wasn't it? We saw that Conway had taken Bernhardt earlier. We didn't see where, because we're watching GTs. Just went back to the Ford chicane at the end of that 9th lap, and Mike just took it with both hands. Thank you very much.
I tell you something, guys. We may well have been waiting for an hour for the drama. 50 minutes it was, but this has been spectacular. What a start!
Yeah, and Sebastian Buemi there, he back in the 6th place. Remember, he just turned a 1 minute 3:44.5, so a whole second quicker than our race leader Mike Conway, who, as he was just saying, had passed 3 cars on that last lap to go from 4th to 1st. But the quickest car on track right now is that number 5 car, the sister machine from Toyota of Sebastian Buemi.
Yeah, and that number 7 car that's just going to come into the picture in a moment, he's been given a track warning going wide at 33, which is where we saw happen throughout the Road to Le Mans race.
And he's going to make the pass here.
Oh,
beautiful piece of drafting, and that's a spectacular shot. Absolutely superb. You can't keep a good man down, and Lotterer is a very good man.
Yeah.
22 hours and 58 minutes then remaining, and finally we get a dry strip. Here's the G-Drive machine in a driver change as well, and tyres as on top. I'll be bound.
So the number 1 car then having another look. Bernhardt all over the back of Jani now, Jani I should say, and here we are on board with Timo Bernhardt. Can he doing about it on the run down to the second chicane?
What do you think about slicks? What do you think about the slicks? Maybe 1 or 2 laps? No, stick your car away.
Wow, that was who was that? Timo Bernhardt on the radio to his engineer saying that he's losing performance with his rear tyres already.
Now we heard Jeremy say, will they make the jump from wets to slicks?
Well, the engineer just asked him that, and Timo said it's far away. It's far away. way. So they've obviously got a choice of intermediates, or they've got the slick intermediates also.
Yeah, and the slick intermediates, they are very slick tire. They're an intermediate tire, but they have no tread pattern, so it's quite important. So it doesn't move the water out of the way like a grooved tire would, but they do have incredible grip in these conditions. My point is that the track drying so quickly, it won't be long before it's good enough for Force X.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a brave man that goes directly onto
that was the change for third. You just saw there, Bernhardt got monstered by Lotterer, got caught up in traffic, and the Audi went straight past. So you've got Toyota, Porsche, Audi now 1, 2, 3.
Isn't that great? And Mike Conway just fastest of all in the middle sector on that lap. Of course, the track's drying out, so you'd expect tyres to come down to be going faster as they work their way past one of the. That was a Labra Corvette, I think.
And look at Buemi coming through now. Buemi's going to make the jump as well, possibly by the Ford chicane he comes. Yeah. Obviously, Damien, the wets are working better on the Toyotas than the other cars.
It looks like the Toyotas love these conditions. It's very interesting to see they're quicker, and as you just rightly said, Mike Conway's done a fantastic sector. It's like 2 seconds quicker in Sector 2 alone. And here's another. That's actually that's the
gone through
Conway. I think.
Yeah, that's
gone through the LMP2.
That's Buemi, isn't it? It's catching. No, Buemi's still stuck there behind.
No, that was the ESM of the LMP2
right.
there.
Yes, it wasn't a pass. It was just a lapping move. But here we are, all flying over each other, monitoring each other through the
Audi pit lane.
Oh, so Audi first to blink.
Yeah, which one's that coming in? Seven car coming in. That's Lotterer. And the number 1 Porsche as well. No, it's not pit lane, sorry. Porsche goes past Bernhardt, so he takes that base back.
So there's a pass now. Buemi has passed.
Yeah. That was going up the hill, wasn't it? I don't know what happened there. Did Bernhardt back off? Went past that. He's standing.
Yeah.
I think the Toyotas are just coming into their own, aren't they?
Our new fastest race up there for Mike Conway. What's that? 3 minutes 41.64 seconds quicker than Neil Jani on that last lap. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Tremendous effort here by Mike Conway, and it's very, very early stages. It's very difficult conditions. You want to make sure you don't make a mistake, certainly in this part of the game. But what a great effort this has been from Mike Conway to lead this motor race.
Was that slick mediates or a slick I saw going on to Audi?
Didn't notice that. We'll keep you up to date on that.
To tell, I'd be surprised if it wasn't a slick, quite frankly, because I think the track is drying out, and the slick immediates, these non-tread kind of wet weather tyres, that they're good at these sort of conditions, or a little bit as the track is drying out.
Lotterer second slicks.
Yeah, it's such a long track here at Le Mans that it's easy to lose a lot of time if you're on the wrong sort of tyre. So we'll have to watch the lap time now of Andre Lotterer, see how quickly he can get this car at speed.
The 91 of Patrick Pilet there going to have a little bit of a scary moment.
Here we go.
Going through,
here comes Buemi then.
Porsche curves.
Buemi's on a charge, comes down the inside. Oh, it's a P2 car. I just thought for a moment that was one of the Audis from the background. No, but he's still just there, stuck, isn't he, behind the number...
The number 8 Audi,
yeah.
the one that stayed out.
He's still in 4th. It's
only a matter of time. He's getting a great run on him now. There you go.
It's going to be a Toyota 1-2 for long, isn't it? And that's bragging rights as we go into the second of the Le Mans 24 hours.
We've got the best of the GT cars up inside the top 12. Isn't that amazing? A lot of the LMP2 cars already not to pit lane. There's another purple sector, by the way, for our race leader in the middle part of this racetrack, and that is a section from the beginning of the Mulsanne straight to just after Mulsanne corner.
Yeah, but Jack, critically, Ford not yet called in for dries. We got Ferrari, Chevrolet, Aston Martin all in the pits and the pros for dry tyres, but they've not yet called the Fords in. Got to pass again. That is Arnie Teig taking Duval for second, so it is now that Toyota 1-2. That came so quickly.
That was he just couldn't make the pass on the inside of Indianapolis because he was on the wet line. So the Audi was able to brake a lot later, but he finally made the pass just before the Porsche curves, and he's on his way.
Conway again setting fastest first sector of anyone by miles, 1.2 seconds faster than anyone else there.
Very exciting to see Toyota so competitive, isn't it?
Well, we've seen it coming all year. We saw it at Spa. Unfortunately, they lost 2 engines at Spa because the ride height was so low. The cars are bottoming out in Eau Rouge, and the shock waves destroyed those engines. Here they know better than that. One of the the mantras is do not ride the curbs, which Audi were doing all weekend.
Yeah, well, Audi drivers have been banned from doing that because of the problem they had, the reliability problem they had in practice, where a gear between the MU and the drive shaft fell down.
So here we go then. It's Conway, it's Gianni, it's Duval, it's Buemi. No, where's Buemi gone?
Here's number 8 car is on to pit lane.
Oh, he's in pit lane now. That's why he's suddenly dropped out of
and the
place.
number 1 car.
Yep, Bernhardt follows him in.
So Mike Conway stays out. He just sets a new fastest lap of race in car number 6, and that lap time
just 2/10 quicker than his teammate.
Yeah. And we're just looking further down, 19th place, Wolf Hensler in the number 78 AM car. He is now leading AM, and he's in 19th place overall. Didn't see that one coming either. That, of course, as Jeremy said, is because of all the recycling in the pit, and that's the KCMG car, which Christian Reed runs, and Wolf Hensler and Joe Camadais are sharing of him this weekend. So sunshine now in the pits, as you can see. Full slicks going on, Damien.
Yeah, that's what we think. Although could the slick immediate because
well, we know that Audi have taken full slicks on. We've told that by Audi here, full slicks.
Oh well, then yeah.
No, it's got to be slicks, Damien. We've got the sun out now. The sun's beating down. It's quite warm out there now, and the track is going to dry, I believe, very, very quickly. It's certainly going to be very, very slippery out there, isn't it? Because you know here, how particularly under the trees there along the Mulsanne, the run to Indianapolis, there's trees very close to the edge of the track, and there, of course, it doesn't dry quite so quickly.
Right, we've got gravel on the track, zone 35, but more importantly, more rain is expected in 15 minutes. Levels 1 to 2, north end of the circuit. So it's all going to change again. We're going to be taking a break in just a moment, and we will have some new voices on when we come back. So enjoy this. Eurosport Live at Le Mans. Doesn't get any better than this, guys.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And we've got the Porsche now leading in GTE Pro. We will take a commercial break and be back very soon.
Завтра в прямом эфире на Евроспорт 2. Route du Sud. 5-й этап.
Welcome back to Eurosport's live coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The whole of the prototype lead classes in. Race leader or race pole position man Neil Jani is in, so too are both Toyota's race leader Mike Conway and his teammate Sebastian Buemi. Andre Lotterer is still out on track, but the other prototype cars, the Porsche number 1 of Brendan Hartley and the Audi number 8 of Loic Duval, have just stopped for a change of tyres as well, as the track started wet and has dried out fast. Sam Hancock, are they going to go straight to a slick? It seems an intermediate is basically just begging to do another pit stop in the next couple of laps.
The problem is you've got 60 cars on a field here and they really clear the line quickly. They're like hairdryers going around. So if you take the risk on intermediates, you are banking on more rainfall within the next 15 minutes. If it doesn't come, you're definitely going to have to make another pit stop.
Well, let's hear from Dr. Wolfgang Ullrich and see how Audi's view of the first hour of the race has been.
Dr. Ullrich, Audi hat gewechselt. Wie ist die Strategie momentan? Ist es trocken genug und hat man Angst, dass gleich wieder...
Just changed tyres and driver change. Is it drive for slicks? It is turning up very quick. Really important to go straight onto slicks as soon as we could. Pretty sure if you're on a wet weather tyre, you're going to lose so much time and the tyres will be completely ruined. But it's exactly what we heard after the qualifying days. Jeremy Shaw, the driver, said that once the track starts to dry, it dries very quickly, and a wet weather tyre lasts barely a lap. Really true if you have to try and hang on, but you don't want to, because you're just giving away time that you'll never get back. That is exactly right, and we saw that Mike Conway and you're hanging on there an extra lap before he brought the Toyota onto pit lane. We have to see when the cars come around again at the end of this lap to see how much that has cost him, because already right away out on the track on slick tyres, the guys that made their pit stops were going faster already. So we'll see now on the next lap how much that has cost the Toyotas. Sam, 11 or 12 seconds faster on slick than on a wet weather tyre, so that could be, you know, half a pit stop time.
Yeah, it was a fantastic gamble by Andre Lotterer, who made the first call to come in for slick tyres, and he immediately started to gain that advantage, as you rightly say, of about 10 seconds or more per lap over the guys that hung on out there, despite the fantastic job we saw Conway doing, who at times there was 4 seconds quicker than anybody in those slippery conditions.
Well, there's no question Conway has got the speed to see the number 1 car of Brendan Hartley going by the Beechstein Aston Martin, and it's obviously we're watching the front of the field because while Reese is being led, but Jeremy, for all 4 classes the deal is the same. The wet weather tyre is the wrong tyre for the weather, but on our screen we are warned that rain level 1 to 2, which is light to really quite hard, is expected in 5 minutes at the north of the circuit, and that's pretty much where we are, the pit lane and the first few corners. So they've had to react to the weather, start on wet. They've had to react to the weather, change onto a slick because it's now so warm, dry, and they're going to have to react to the weather again if and when the rain shower comes. Yeah, it's really tricky to make that call at this stage, but as Sam was saying there, you know, the wet weather tyres, as soon as the track is dried out, you're losing an awful lot of time. On the previous lap before he came into the pits, Mike Conway set the fastest lap at 3 minutes 38. Next time around, having made the stop 1 lap earlier, Andre Lotterer turns a 3:29, and now Brendan Hartley in a number 1 Porsche to just reduce that line on lap 13 to 3 minutes 26. Gavin's Corvette lying in 4th place in the GTE Pro class, battling with Patrick Pilet's Porsche, which is going by him, and towing up behind him is the number 82 Ferrari, and that is Giancarlo Fisichella. So Gav being jumped by the Porsche. Now, I was talking to the Porsche GT drivers, the Pro class cars, Fred Makovici, Ilbamba, just before we came up to the booth to start our program, and they were just in the depths, really, of, right, this is just going to be a horrible 24 hours. First and second in GTE Pro at the moment, Fred Mako in a Porsche, and the Ferrari of, the Ford of Richard Westbrook in second. But again, you can see the Ferrari and the Porsche both have a
slight upper hand over the Corvette now. Has that Corvette of Ollie Gavin already made a stop? And the answer is yes, it has. So that is on slicks, and so too is Pilet, and so too is Fisichella. Pretty much so too is everybody else. But Gavin finding it hard to match the Porsche even on pace.
Well, it's a fantastic display of incredible racecraft by three of the world's top factory drivers, all here in the same part of the track at the same time. Now, when you have a slipstreaming effect like this, whoever is in front faces a huge disadvantage because they have to punch a hole in the air first. The guys behind get a gradually better slipstream, so you'll see a lot of track position. A lot of position changes as they go around the lap. But what's interesting is we've got the perfect illustration of what those late tweaks to the balance of performance have done. You would have thought, wouldn't you, based on qualifying, that the Ferrari would be able to tow by and disappear off into the distance, but it's not. The Porsche was leading the train there. The Corvette is holding on to the back of it. This is arguably a great display from the regulator's latest decisions to equalise the balance of performance before the race.
I would say just the opposite. When we picked this battle up, the Corvette was in front. It's now at the back. The Ferrari has just towed past in a straight line, side by side, on pace, past the Corvette and past the Porsche. Exactly what Porsche and Corvette said would happen, and the balance of performance has not worked. The Ferrari is now driving away from, despite the fact that at nearly 200 miles an hour, it's giving them the benefit of a tow. And it has still got more power than the Porsche and the Corvette.
And now, of course, I wish I held my tongue. Just another 20 seconds.
That's all right. I allowed you to embark on that run down the rapids before I pointed out the hole in your canoe. Now, going around the outside, yeah, throw you under the bus. Going around the outside of them, the number 36 Alpine. And this is one of our LMP2 Alpine Nissans. Gustavo Menezes, Nico Lapierre. Yeah, the only word I picked out of that station announcement was Ferrari.
I picked out exactly what he said. The Ferrari is in another category.
Yeah, it is. It's in GTE Pro Plus.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And
third pit stop for the car, is it? I think they made
number 7 Audi, the leader, just came into the pits. Andrea Lotterer. Does that feel too soon, Jeremy?
Well, his fuel. Yes, I would have thought so. They've completed 14 laps, but most of that was under the behind the safety car. So I'm surprised it's as soon as that.
Yeah, well, he was just about holding his own in terms of pace in the number 7 Audi. Brendan Hartley leads the race for Porsche, car number 1, position number 1. Loic Duval in second place in the number 8 Audi, tucking down the inside there of one of the GT. That's the Proton competition Porsche, Dempsey Proton Racing. And here's the car that has now sagged to third with this stop going back in the garage. It's on trolley dollies.
Yeah, well, I mean, they would have topped it up with fuel when it came in just 4 laps ago, so clearly totally out of schedule and very, very early. Really just sort of 7 or 8 laps into the race, really, since we got going.
Okay, back end bodywork's off, wheel arches are off, so something engine transmission. It's not the front end drop gear which caused some problem on both cars in qualifying. Look, when the weather was the way it was on Wednesday, we kind of went, you know what? This is going to be a weird, wacky Le Mans, and somebody is going to get the biggest rub of the green, and that's what's going to win the race, because you're going to need luck, perhaps almost more than anything else in this race this year.
But that is a rotten time to lose it. That was our race leader who'd made a fantastic early call to take slicks before anybody else. He was reaping the advantage. He navigated his outlap in the following one when the circuit was still damp superbly, and it was about to pay off. Andre Lotterer getting a tough roll of the dice there.
Slow car on track being reported, and it's the Dane Train Ferrari, the one with Christian Nielsen driving it, and that is after zone 30, which is I have no idea. Somewhere anyway, there's a slow Ferrari circulating, but it hasn't stopped yet, and the rain's still expected at 16:20, which is 2 minutes ago. It is getting increasingly dark here, and the Ferrari makes its way into pit road, so the number 60 car makes its way back in. It's the Formula Racing Ferrari, a Le Mans Series regular, but the drama surrounding Audi, they didn't look their normal state of preparedness. They were not the first 2 cars on pit road at the start of any session like they normally are. They barely had a car out when everybody else was doing lapping at the start of almost any session, Sam, and that's It's the most un-Audi couple of days I think we've ever seen.
And meanwhile, we've seen Porsche have more of a clean run through the week, the likes of which we're normally accustomed to seeing Audi have. They've had everything go to plan, and currently Brendan Hartley is storming it as we look at the Ferrari that's got the front left wheel off.
Now, has it shed a wheel? I think that's why it was going so slowly. It looked like it was down on the left front. I assumed a puncture, but there is no wheel unless the Michelin, there is one tyre off, so they have taken one off, so maybe it wasn't a puncture, maybe it was a...
Be advised, rain expected in the next 2 minutes, rain expected in the next 2 minutes, and it will last 15 minutes.
Just talking to Marco Werner before we came on air after our last break, and he was saying, they should have started a couple of laps earlier at least. And everybody who wasn't in a car thought exactly the same, but there are a few drivers already saying, if I was in one of the cars and they went green when the fans wanted them to, I would have boxed.
We're just looking at the duel here between LMP2 drivers. You've got Britain's Johnny Kane and the Straka Racing Gibson chassis leading. I think it was Richard Bradley.
It is.
In the Orica just behind. That is in the LMP2 category, and that's the fight for fourth
position, because Roberto Merri in a Manor Motorsport entry, he made his pit stop before everybody else in LMP2, and he's out there. He's got a huge lead now of about 14 seconds over Matthias Besch in that car before he looks for TDS Serie.
So is that John Manners' Formula One strategy brain going ching-ching and getting Roberto out in front? Case of course, last year's LMP2 class winners. So Richard Bradley, Matt Howson back here. They're not doing a full World Endurance Series this year as they did last year with the LMP2 car. So this is sort of their big deal for the year.
Yes.
And deals don't get much bigger. But as you see, very competitive still. Audi with one car already in the garage, but the other one setting the pace out front with the number 8 car, Loic Duval.
Loic Duval, who took the lead, and we didn't see it. We're looking at an onboard replay now on the start-finish straight. Loic Duval taking advantage of what looked like Hartley getting held up behind, was it one of the GT cars?
Yeah, it was a P2 car, wasn't it? In fact, a pair of P2 cars. That's Michele Alishon on the extreme left getting out of the way in the BR1 Nissan, but it was, that was, you know when you tighten the lap belts and it cinches a bit, he was breathing in, it would not have cinched a bit there. There would be no chafing. He was breathing everything in to get around the outside there. But again, you know, we're halfway through the second hour of 24, and they have to race each other like it's the final lap at Formula Ford Festival. And genuinely they do, because of the way the hybrid energy system works. You have a maximum amount of energy you're allowed to use. You don't have to, but why would you not use full throttle in a racing car? Why would you not use all the power available, all the grip available to you? So of course you do have to, but you can't exceed it, which means, Sam, effectively you have to drive these cars every single lap as if it's a qualifying lap to the maximum of its allowed performance, and that means phenomenal pressure. The endurance in this race is driver endurance.
Just a reminder for sector 1, just a fair margin. We've got a good pace, mate.
Right, little bit of drizzle with a worry for the number 1 Porsche. There is a bit more worry for the number 7 Audi. That had all the hallmark of an extinguisher going off. It wasn't a lot of mess. It was maybe that an airline they're using to blow something out. But what can we say about the number 7 Audi? Possibly in another couple of laps we can say it's not going to win this race, but we can't say that yet because it's only a couple of laps back, and Audi have done bigger problems before, but also with the weather the way that it might be before tomorrow morning, you know, all bets are off. We're not going to predict anything here because we're just going to look even bigger fools than we normally do. Predicting this race is Mug's game. Yeah, I still haven't learned that after 30 years.
And the new purple sector there for Loic Duval, having taken the lead from Brendan Hartley on this lap. He now has made full margin of that, so even while Brendan Hartley was held up and then going up towards the Dunlop S's, Loic clearly was not going to charge him. Two cars come now to complete lap 16, less than a second between them, and 8 seconds back to the third place car of Mike Conway, and Sebastian Buemi is a similar distance, if not more behind. What's interesting to me is that the Audi and Porsche teams hedged the bets during those first pit stops, and both came put their cars Beetles came in on the same lap.
We talked about this at lunchtime, didn't we? And I was saying I wouldn't be surprised if we'd started green for each team to bring in, because they've only got 2, not 3, which they usually have, to bring one team in a lap early. Because we've had a lot of wet running, we had a dry test weekend, but that's not enough to guarantee you've got your maths right on the fuel. I wouldn't have been surprised to see one come in a lap earlier than safe and another one a lap at where they thought was safe, just in case. But as you said, Toyota quite often pit both together, and they are both together. The other thing that I'm going to question now, and this is very old-fashioned thinking, this is Sterling Moss thinking, has each team got a rabbit and a hare? At the moment, we've got 3 hares out front. We'll answer that one in the next 22 hours.
Le 3 settimane del nostro sforzo intenso, ci vuole veramente un grande allenamento, una grande dedizione, è una salita molto complicata ed è molto difficile da affrontare perché se c'è veramente tanto vento, anche chi sta a ruota dietro fa molta fatica. Penso però che per il Tour de France l'emozione più bella è quella dell'ultimo giorno, quella finale a Champs-Élysées.
Момент истины приближается.
Welcome back to Le Mans live on Eurosport. Fantastic lead battle on the left of your screen. Audi number 8, Loic Duval behind him. Brendan Hartley came across the line just a second behind and up into the Dunlop curves, was barely 2 car lengths behind. The Porsche making up under braking on the Audi, and the Audi just stretching its legs as it picks up speed along the track. Mike Conway now in 3rd place, fastest race lap at 3:25.8. That is nearly 4 seconds quicker than the leader, exactly what he was doing before he came in for a fuel stop. Rain has arrived at our commentary box window at the Porsche Cups. Loic Duval reported it, and it is now arrived. Johnny Kay in the LMP2 class dives into the pits in front of us from 3rd place. That wasn't Johnny Kay, in fact. He's still battling Jake Dennis in a all-Gibson battle for 3rd place, but the lead battle again is on.
Hartley down the inside into 2nd chicane. How did he do that? Got the run on Loic Duval somewhere between the 1st and the 2nd chicane. Made a very clean pass.
How did he make up a second on him? That's insane on the beginning of the Mossad. That's ridiculous.
Loic Duval flashing his headlights aggressively, letting the LMP2 drivers around him know that under no circumstance must they get in the way of this battle.
just cleared, and I sense perhaps that Loic Duval is the first chicane when we weren't seeing them got held up in some slower cars. They just cleared all those LMP2's machines. Let's take a look at what else is going on. As you mentioned, Manor Motorsport leading in LMP2, Jeremy Roberto Mary ahead of Matthias Beck, so it's an Orica chassis 1-2. Johnny Kane third, Jake Dennis fourth, Richard Bradley fifth, Britt ahead of René Rast, the pole sitter, in sixth position. In GTE Pro class, Porsche still have the lead. Fred Macavici's Porsche, the Ford of Richard Westbrook second, the Ferrari of James Calado third. So we got three big manufacturers in the top three, and the AM class, a big change around there as well. Porsche was struggling for pace at the beginning of qualifying, but Lee Keen leads in a car that is now a two-driver car, and Patrick Long in second, and Bob Hensler in third. Porsche. That rain is what Porsche need in both GT classes, but again, look at the lead battle. They get around the G-Drive Ligier, and suddenly you could fit a fed paper between the front two in our race after an hour and a half.
There is so much going on. This is absolutely fantastic. And in that GTE AM battle, let's just talk about it very briefly. Keane leads, but Patrick Long is closing really quickly on the last lap. He pulled up 2.5 seconds on Lee Keen, and Wolf Hensler there in third position in car number 78. The third of the Porsches, still running very well. Adam Carroll running now fourth, also in a Porsche. 1, 2, 3, 4 in GTE AM for Porsche.
Yeah, that's the Golf car, and Rain also in the S's. Now, those of you who have been coming here as long as I have can remember the S's that you see in pictures of the GT40s and the Porsche 956s and the Alpines and everything else with the big high walls around them that have been smoothed out and completely reprofiled to make this a motorcycle Grand Prix circuit as well. And it's actually, well, it's added a different challenge to the challenge that was there before, and it is just as demanding a bit of racetrack. Headlights flashing on car number 6. This is Great Britain's Mike Conway, pulling out behind compatriot Richard Bradley in the KCMG number 47 Orica. That's the car that won the race in LMP2 last year. Currently lies in 5th place in the class, and pit stop for Mikhail Alishin, the red, white and blue LMP Racing BR01, which has been right to the tail of the field since the start of the race.
Yeah, it's the second stop for that car during this race, and Mike Conway there really is charging along, isn't it? Interesting to me that Romain Dumas in the, well, the sole remaining, Romain Dumas in the second of the pushers is not in the same sort of pace as the other guys there, falling back in the 5th position.
Great view there of what 1,000 horsepower in a Porsche prototype does compared to 600 horsepower in an Aston Martin GT car. And these prototypes use the hybrid power off the slow corners. Down here at Mulsanne corner will be another example. Harvesting. Hit the throttle, whoosh, 1,000 horsepower, fires you like an aircraft after an aircraft carrier deck out of the corner. And still the Porsche can't escape the Audi, and the Audi can't get any closer to the Porsche. They are so tightly matched.
Yeah, and we saw Loic Duval using that 1,000 or so horsepower to quite scary effect as they came out of the second chicane there on the Mulsanne straight. He got bulked by the GT Aston Martin in front of him, not wanting to lose any time. He committed all 4 tyres around the outside beyond the white line that limits the edge of the circuit, and that is it's quite rough over there. There's some loose stones. It's totally drivable, but you do increase the risk of getting punctures. So if we were in any doubt whatsoever, which of course we haven't, these guys are leaving nothing on the table. This is flat out at the front of the field.
It is 24 hours of non-stop qualifying laps. They are driving these cars within not even an ounce of their lives, with no margin for error whatsoever. Now that is the sort of critical area on this track. The Porsche curves more than any other, where that could easily cost you a full second that might take you an entire stint to make back up, just catching one bar in the wrong place. Now we're hearing it's a turbocharger change on the number 7 Audi. Of course, it's a diesel engine in the Audis, petrol engine in their Porsche and Toyota rivals, all turbocharged, all using various different energy recovery units, and then converting all of that recovered energy into electricity to drive motors at the front and the rear. So all cars go into quattro mode or 4-wheel drive as they're fired off the corner to handle all that horsepower, especially in the rain.
Duval taking a chunk out of Brendan Hartley's Porsche cushion as they came in front of a commentary booth on the brakes into the very tight left-right final chicane. But Brendan getting the jump out of the corner. It seems that the Porsche has a bit more punch on the way out of the slow corners than the Audi, but the Audi has the ability into them to brake just a little later.
Mike Conway from 3.1 seconds behind on the last lap down to 2.2 on this lap. There he is. That's your 1, that's your 2, that is your 3. That is your top 3 within sight of each other. And Conway, at these speeds, is starting to pick up an aerodynamic toe from those two cars. Maybe within a lap, within a second of them, and the speed on the straight on the way down to Indianapolis, he will be starting to be hooved along by the cars in front, and his pace will continue to increase.
And that gap has come down from 9.7 seconds to about 6.5 to 5.7 to 2.2 last time around. Mike Conway is coming in that car number 6.
Yeah, Britain Mike Conway by far and away my star of the race so far. There's an inevitability, isn't there, from what we've seen already about him catching that leading pair and hopefully sliding through and pulling away. It's what he did earlier in the race in mixed conditions. Now we're in the dry. I thought that the Toyota might be dropped a little by the leading duo, but far from it. Conway is reeling them in.
Okay, here's the way it works. Last lap round, leader Brendan Hartley, 3 minutes 29.7. Second place, Loic Duval, 3 minutes 29.8. Fourth place, Sebastian Buemi, the second Toyota, 3 minutes 29.6. They're doing the same lap times. Third place, Mike Conway, 3 minutes 26.7. The top 4 cars are all doing the same lap times, except for Conway, who can't help himself but go at least 3 seconds a lap quicker. So it's not the car. Right now, it's the nut loose behind the wheel, who is absolutely tearing into our leaders, Brendan Hartley from New Zealand and France's Loic Duval.
And there is always the question at Le Mans, with such a long lap and so many cars of different categories on it, of who gets the more favourable traffic breaks that dictate whether or not you do a really quick lap time. But we're seeing consistently for Conway that he is that chunk quicker, so it doesn't necessarily mean he or the car are that much quicker than the leading duo. It means that perhaps he's being more aggressive or just more skillful in how he's carving his way through the traffic.
The number 7 Audi is back out on pit road. It is not even on page 2 of our timing screen. It has fallen out of the top 50 places. Jeremy needs to flick over onto page 3 to see how many laps it is behind. They will go out and they will continue to try and bring the car to the back or to the end of the race. But there's your race leader, Brendan Hartley, held up behind another LMP2 car. And is that going to cost him the lead? Loic Duval's less than half a second behind him and is now right with him. Another open LMP class, one of 4 LMP2 cars without a roof over it. And that is the Pegasus Racing Machine. They go streaming by him. And Brendan Hartley got through, but Loic Duval just caught him in the Dunlop curve. And Duval has a big moment getting it stopped into the Dunlop chicane in that number car. And now the gap. Mike Conway was 1.9 behind the leader at the line, and Loic Duval was 0.69 behind the leader. So Conway, Duval and, well, Brendan Hartley, they were all equidistant, but now the Toyota is closing in. Well, Seaman Kupfer is down in the pit lane. Let's try and catch up with Dr. Ulrich and find out exactly what happened to the Audi that is now second to last.
Dr. Ulrich, was war das Problem? 20 Minuten in der Box.
20 minutes in the box. What was the problem? Turbocharger. Unfortunately, we had to change it. Weren't expecting this at all. Can't tell you the last time we had a turbo problem with the car. It's not something you ever think of. The crew have done a fantastic job to do it in 20 minutes, but unfortunately it's a disaster for the race. Really not help at all. Number 7 car was leading at the time, and now it is, in fact, he says it's a long way down. It's 59th of our 60 cars, but the team have the motivation now to try and bring it to the finish line. Any chance that the same problem might afflict car number 8? Well, we say in Germany the devil never sleeps, but we don't expect the turbos ever to be a problem, so we hope it won't be on the number 8 car. Well, Sam Hancock, you know, as a racing driver, if your sister car disappears from the lead and then you never see it again, you immediately start to worry about your own car, because they're the same. They're built to the same unbelievably exacting standard. And of course you can have one freak failure, but you then have... You've got 22 and a quarter hours to worry about the 100 million to 1 chance to your car as well.
Yeah, and of course we've seen it plenty. Oh, you just see a replay here. Brendan having to go really defensive as he gets ball passing the LMP2 traffic coming down into the 4 chicanes. Loic Duval desperately trying to seize the moment to get by.
Well, that was a lap ago, wasn't it? We were on board with Hartley at that stage, and this is what it looked like from behind. From on Brendan Hartley, once he cleared the P2 car, we saw nothing. He will have known what was in the mirrors, and that was Loic Duval's view. And you also saw Mike Conway getting held up there, and that has dropped him a little behind our lead duo. The top 2, after 2 hours of racing, very nearly, are covered by 6 seconds.
Conspiracy theorists probably.
Well, no, it's no conspiracy. The whole idea of all the rules at the ACO is to try and make as level a playing field in each of the classes as you can, and they have balanced different ways of generating carbon fuel energy with different ways of regeneration to try and make sure that everybody has a set maximum. And if you do a great engineering job, you can use all of it. And these are both teams run by great engineers, and so they're all using all of it. And so it shouldn't be a surprise that they are as good as each other and as good as they are.
Oh man, on a mission there, Conway right up there in the slipstream behind Loic Duval and the number 8 Audi. Martin, what I was actually referring to was the fact that the Audi ironically got heavily held back and balked by the GT class Porsche, allowing Brendan Porsche to pull a bit of a cushion as they enter the Porsche curves.
And not only that, Sam Hancock, but Brendan Hartley just took the fastest lap of the race as well. A 3:25 now, 0.779 for Brendan Hartley. So all of a sudden, that gap has gone out to 5 seconds. That's a cushion that he'll be very happy with at this stage.
Well, the answer to how far behind is the number 7 Audi is 15 laps completed compared to 21 laps completed by the leader. More pit stops in the LMP2 class.
That's a race leader.
René Rast came in.
And that is indeed the race leader, because the other leaders came in last time around. René Rast has completed one more lap than Roberto Merri and Matthias Besch and various other guys in the P2 class. So
which is
cycling through now in P2.
More trouble for Ford, which has all cycled Vitaly Petrov to the top of the LMP2 pile in the BR01 Nissan. And which of the Fords is in the garage? It's 67. It's Andy Prio's car that came in under the yellow flags, under the safety car earlier on. So 67 Ford has gone into the garage. That's the car he shares with Harry Tincknell and Marino Franchitti. It's an all-British entry. A Guernseyman, Scott, and a Devonian. So not an Englishman amongst them, but nevertheless, that is an all-British entry, and they have had trouble right from the beginning.
Conway can't quite get close enough in the braking zone to take a lunge up the inside. If it were a sprint race, a single-seater race, you might consider taking that risk, but with nigh on 22 hours still to go, that's probably a risk too far. Better to hold back, sit in the slipstream, put the pressure on as he's doing now as they're on the flat-out run at 320 kilometers per hour towards Indianapolis, slicing through the forest. There's no chance to get through here, but look out for a position change on the run out of Arnage Corner. This tight 90-degree first gear right-hander that's coming up feels a little bit like ice as you hit the brakes there. The downforce just not working at the slow speed, but now he's got a chance heading up into the Porsche curves.
GT car and a P2 car in front of them, and all of these lead drivers have stellar single-seater careers behind them, and as a result you're seeing them racing as if it is the final stages of a single-seater race, wheel to wheel, no quarting but none asked. They're going by the GTE AM class car. Is that the 98 car, isn't it? As they light it up through the Porsche curves. Stunning battling between these guys.
And the number 7 car just came past here, out on the racetrack. 6 laps down now to the race leaders.
Yeah. So they have a huge amount of work to do. Even the Delayed Rebellion and even the Bicolors racing car are in front of that number 7 Audi. It has got pace, but it's not going to win unless something incredibly fortuitous happens to them now and befalls everybody else. We've got just breaking free, Brendan Hartley the leader, then Loic Duval is now nearly a second in front of Mike Conway, who again catches traffic, the Dempsey Proton Porsche. That really dark black sky in front of them should have passed them by. The rain has gone, the track is relatively dry, and the pressure rising here at Le Mans.
Только избранным дано управлять миром. Наслаждаться непревзойденным уровнем комфорта, где самые изысканные материалы сочетаются с передовыми технологиями. Избранным доступна роскошь в самом современном воплощении. Новый BMW 7 серии. Самый инновационный BMW.
За каждой бутылкой Велкоповицкий козел безалкогольное мастерство пивоваров, влюбленных в свое дело. Здесь мы вертимся как белка в колесе. Работаем со вкусом. Для того, чтобы не хвастаться мастерством, а наслаждаться им вместе со всеми. Велкоповицкий козел безалкогольный. Наслаждайтесь нашим мастерством.
Лето – это момент. Насладись им. Пепси.
Звучит как спорткар. Дарит чувство спорткара. Маневренный, как спорткар. И герб на нем – свидетельство спорткара. Porsche Macan. Для тех, кто верит, что каждый автомобиль Porsche – это спорткар.
Все, что нужно, чтобы быть готовым к приключениям, которые вам и не снились. Outventure. Приключение начинается.
Звучит как спорткар. Дарит чувство спорткара. Маневренный, как спорткар. И герб на нем – свидетельство спорткара. Porsche Macan. Для тех, кто верит, что каждый автомобиль Porsche – это спорткар.
За гранью возможного. 24 часа высоких технологий и изнурительных испытаний. На одной из величайших гонок в мире. 24 часа Лимана в прямом эфире на Евроспорт 1 и Евроспорт Player.
Welcome back to Eurosport's live coverage of Le Mans, where the second-placed Audi of Loic Duval has just peeled into the pits. Harry Tinknell in the pit lane, and so too, unfortunately, is his car. He's having a chat with Brad Pitt, as Andy Prio is in the car waiting service. Number 8, Audi is there, Loic Duval. Jeremy Shaw doing a 12-lap stint. Is that as much as we anticipate getting out of an Audi? I think it might be.
It's interesting to see how long they can manage, but certainly that car is coming in now. It last period on the same lap as number 1, so the Porsche, the race leader, certainly doing one more lap than the number 8 car.
I think that's what we expected. And I think we expected that Toyota could do 14 on the stint. Mike Conway, the Toyota in second. Number 5 there, you're looking at Sebastian Buemi in third. As the number 64 Corvette of Ollie Gavin gets dumped by yet another car. No, he's gone in front of pole sitter in the GTE Pro class. Dirk Muller on board with 68. Now, all of the talk this morning was about the ACO not taking enough performance away from Ford and Ferrari in the GT classes. And suddenly, we've got one Ford making another garage visit. The pole-sitting Ford GT just being passed by Ollie Gav's ostensibly slower Corvette. So, has it made a difference? Is the increasing temperature bringing up the ambient barometric pressure to rob Ford of some of its boost level? Looks like it's going to be maybe more of a straight fight than we had anticipated.
Well, they lost some boost through the midsection of their rev rate, but the boost pressure allowed remained untouched at the very top end.
Yeah.
So when they're flat out down the straights, there's not really any difference.
The problem is everybody else had less power than them off the corners. So headlights flashing from behind. Is that our race leader, car number 1, Brendan Hartley? It's about the right place for him to be, on board with Oliver Gavin, Yardley Hastings' finest Corvette racer.
Yeah, and in GTE Pro, Fred Makovicki in car number 92 is the lead, but that gap now to Richard Westbrook in the best of Ford's car number 69 is down to just 2.5 seconds. So Richard Westbrook is really closing in there in the second place. Not too far back either are both James Collado and in the car number 51, and the other Ferrari, Giancarlo Fisichella, that's number 82 car for Competizione. In the LMP2, Roberto Merri leads once again for Manor Motorsport after that round of pit stops, but the deficit or the gap between those two went from 10 seconds to 22 seconds down to 14 now.
Leader in, here comes the Porsche down pit road. Brendan Hartley from Palmerston North in the land of the long white cloud. The Kiwi brings the car onto pit road, and unless Mike Conway follows him in, and he does not, we will have a Toyota 1-2. Mike Conway takes the lead. Also on pit road for Jeremy's information, was that 61? Missed out. That was 41 coming in the LMP2 class. And that is the Greaves Motorsport Ligier Nissan. But here is the car that was our race leader. Kiwi Brendan Hartley, door open. But not driver's door open, so they're just changing and topping up. That'll be oil, pressurized oil canister and pressurized drinks canister as well. Hartley stays in, our overall and LMP1 hybrid race leader. And so Toyota now 1-2. Mike Conway ahead of teammate Sebastian Buemi by 21.5 seconds as the Porsche rolls out of pit road.
It's strange that Sebastian Buemi hasn't really been able to show the same sort of pace as Conway, and it seems to be a situation mirrored somewhat in the Porsche camp, with Dumas' pace just quite apparently lacking compared to what Hartley's been able to do so far. We were discussing off air, if the teams are playing a tortoise and hare strategy, what is it really that they would do to either allow one of them to go a bit quicker or withhold the other? And the only thing that I can really think that might be prevalent is setting the cars up to be more one of the cars up be more friendly in the rain, to make it a little bit slower in the dry.
The problem is the forecast is for a predominantly dry race, which means it's going to murder its dry weather tyres, even if it is a little bit better. And if it's only going to be a quarter wet and you're giving away performance for 3/4 of the race, that doesn't sound to be like much of a trade-off. You're right, though. You can't add more performance to the car because that's illegal. So the only thing you do is to have one that's going at maximum 100% and one that's going at less than maximum, and I'm not sure that you want to do that either. A 67 Ford GT prototype is in the pit lane. Let's get down and talk to its chief engineer and find out what's the story.
Yeah, Dave Perisic, you had the problems with the gearbox before. Is it the same problem again?
It is the same problem. We thought it was temperature related, so we thought we had it fixed. Apparently it's more than that, so we're going to have to tear the gearbox apart right now and see what we can do. So we're taking the side of it off, we're going to rebuild it, we'll get it back out on the track.
So you're getting back out of the track. You want to finish this race no matter what?
We are going to finish this race, so it might take us about a half hour, 45 minutes, I don't know yet, but we will be back out there.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And in the inset, Richard Westbrook gets in front of Fred Makovici. You also saw the race leader almost falling over the Algarve Pro Racing Ligier Nissan that Chris Hoy is driving. It was Antonio Pizzitola who's driving that on board in the Porsche. And Fred Mako was a bit disparaging about balance of performance at lunchtime, and that's exactly what he was saying. He said they just drive past you and go away.
Comprehensively blown away on the straightaway. There was Fred in the Porsche, and yeah, you can see the difference from on board that Porsche. Also talking about Porsches in GTE AM, it's Patrick Long who leads now in car number 78 from number 78 of Wolf Hensler, and Adam Carroll now up into third place in car number 86. That's the Gulf Racing Machine, and behind him in fourth now is number 55, of course, of Ferrari, Matt Griffin, currently at the wheel of that car.
Jeremy will want to make a note of the fact that Paul Chatin has just stopped in the number 23 Ligier Nissan. That's the new team to Le Mans, Panis Barthez, with Olivier Panis and Fabien Barthez, France's World Cup winning goalkeeper, not only owner but also driver. Into come number 40, the Crown Racing Ligier Nissan, not Ligier Chud anymore, and number 2, Romain Dumas in the Porsche from third place, leaving both Toyotas still out, 1-2 on the racetrack, and yet to match their rivals by making a second stop.
And the GTE Pro Class leader, Richard Westbrook's Ford GT, coming into the pit lane right in front of our booth, allowing Makovici, who he's just displaced, back into the lead of that class.
Yeah, so Fred Mako stays out a lap longer at least, and you know, this is generally the balance in a road car, isn't it? If you've got an Aston Martin V12, it's going to go faster but less far on the same tank as fuel as a 2-litre Ford Focus. So that's the deal here as well. The faster you want to go, the harder you have to force your car through the air, and the more energy you need, and each car is only allowed a certain amount of fuel in the tank, and therefore if you're going quicker you tend to stop more frequently. It is that balance.
Now, we've just seen the Ford GT in the pit garage. We just heard from the team there that they had a gearbox problem. Is that, do we think, what Andy Priaulx was referring to under the safety car laps before the race went green, when he said to the guys over the radio, don't panic, nothing to be worried about, but just for your information, there is a slight harshness that I'm hearing and feeling from the rear of the car.
Yeah, every time he's pulling the shifter and it's going up a gear, clang, clang. I mean, it's not like that, but it's not exactly the way it should be.